AVAIYA has changed my life.
AVAIYA has made me the woman I am today.
AVAIYA is my home.
AVAIYA is personal freedom.
AVAIYA is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about AVAIYA.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, AVAIYA, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Louise Hay once said, "You have been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." Hello, everyone. I am Andy Anderson. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are the founders of AVAIYA University. Thanks so much for joining us. In this event, we are talking with loving experts. We're talking with therapists, authors, and more who are here to help you build your confidence, self-love, compassion, and step into the powerful person you are. Today, our guests will be talking about how to address the hecklers in your head. So please welcome Dr. Elise Snipes. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you doing?
Just great, thanks.
Awesome. I want to tell everyone a little bit about you, and then we'll start with some questions. So Elise is a licensed, excuse me, gosh, I'm botching that one, is licensed as a clinical psychotherapist in Tennessee. See, there's self-confidence for you. You know, we can all make mistakes and keep going. And Florida. She is currently the executive director for All CEU's Counselor Education. She hosts Counselor Toolbox podcasts, which was selected as one of the top counseling podcasts of 2019. She also maintains a small private practice specializing in things like trauma, mood disorders, and addiction. So I would love it if we could just dive into this topic of hecklers. What are the hecklers?
The hecklers, as I refer to them, are those things that we tell ourselves, the voices that we hear in our head that say you're not good enough, or you're too fat, or you're stupid. A lot of times they are things that we heard from somebody else who was important to us when we were younger. And for a lot of reasons that we'll probably get into in a minute, those things stuck with us. So now every time we're in a similar situation, we hear that person over again saying something, and they may not have even meant it to be as critical or as harmful as it came across, but it still stuck with you. My grandfather, for example, when, oh golly, I must have been about 10, and we were at the breakfast table and everybody was eating and we were passing around the food, and I took more than 2 pieces of bacon, and he was like, "Well, aren't we a little piggy today?" And so now whenever I eat in front of people, every time I start scooping out, I hear that voice in the back of my head, and I have to tell him to, be quiet. He didn't mean to be mean. He was just, being grandpa, but it stuck with me. And because I was, at that formative age where I was, still in real concrete operational thought, I wasn't able to differentiate sarcasm from, oh my gosh, he really meant it. So as we go through our life, we encounter people, we encounter situations, and some of those events we hone in on and we remember. And then when we're in similar situations, it comes back at us. And part of dealing with those issues and improving our self-esteem is going back and looking at those issues and saying, all right, now that I'm older and I can see, the big picture, is there something that I'm missing? Did I misinterpret what was going on? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. And if I did, then okay, great. I have a new interpretation. If I didn't, okay, maybe that person was being unreasonably critical. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to handle that? I can either choose to be miserable. I can choose to let it go because that's really not, that one comment is really not that important to me. Or I can choose to evaluate my current behavior and say, am I fulfilling this negative thing? And if I am, then maybe I need to do something to change it.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I think so many of us have these triggers from our past and that we remember like you do. So I'm anticipating that a lot of people might not remember. They might be a person who doesn't like eating in front of other people, but they don't know why and all that kind of stuff.
And that's true. And sometimes you may not remember the exact trigger. You just feel self-conscious eating in front of people. And I think it's important to figure out what you're telling yourself at that very moment. You likely heard it from somewhere, but it doesn't matter. You're telling yourself that right now. And you need to figure out the validity of those statements. Are they, if you have difficulty eating in front of other people, why is that? Are you afraid they're judging you for what you're eating, how much you're eating, the way you chew? What is it that is causing you to be self-conscious? And what does that mean to you? Is this something that's really important? Or, are people going to have issues? Not everybody's going to like the fact that I'm an omnivore. My daughter is a vegan, and she's like, Mom, I don't see how you can do that. I'm like, well, baby, I do. I'm sorry. But she's not judgy about it. She's just like, I don't get it.
Right.
And I could take that personally, and I can be really self-conscious about what I'm eating, or I could recognize that what works for me doesn't work for everybody else. Looking at those different things, and again, going back to what is it that you're telling yourself that is making you feel uncomfortable, because clearly you're judging yourself in some way, or you think others are judging you, and you need to figure out how real that is. Where are the facts for that? Do you see anybody with a notepad writing down the number of calories you're eating, or figuring out how many spoonfuls of mashed potatoes you took? That is one way to start addressing those thoughts. Look at the facts. Look around you and see what other people are doing, whether it's, at the gym. I get on the gym, and I'm one of those people who, if I get on the gym and somebody get on the Stairmaster or the treadmill and somebody gets on after me, well, doggone it, I am not getting off until they get off. I'm not getting off first, because my ego gets, and I know in my head that is completely irrational. Nobody's really paying that much attention to me. I'm the only one paying that much attention. And that's the other part with self-esteem, is we live in our own bodies. So in some ways, we sort of feel like the world revolves around us. We feel like everybody's paying attention to what we're doing because we're paying attention to what we're doing. When in reality, most people don't even notice what we've done. My daughter was in martial arts. And, sometimes in martial arts, when you're throwing a kick or doing something, occasionally you'll pass gas. And hope she won't listen to this now. But it happens. Everybody does it. And the guys in the dojang would laugh about it. When they would do it, they would think that was just the funniest thing in the world. She would do it, and she would perseverate on it for a day or two afterwards. And then like 3 months later, she's still bringing it up. I wonder if they remember. I'm like, I didn't even remember.
Right. Yeah.
Encouraging people to take a more realistic point of view. And one of the activities that I have my clients do sometimes is to recognize how little attention they pay to what everybody else does. So I want them to tell me about all of the embarrassing things that their coworkers did in the past week. And most of the time they come up with nothing. And I'm like, chances are they did something embarrassing or silly or irritating, and you just don't remember it.
Right.
And it's important to recognize that other people are the same way. And figure out whether you want to be always second guessing yourself, and if that's how you want to use your energy. Self-esteem comes from feeling like we are, to quote Stuart Smalley, good enough, smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like us. Well, we've got to believe that about ourselves. We've got to like ourselves first and project that image. So looking at, what are all the awesome things that you do bring to the table? What are all the strengths? What are all your character, whatever word I'm looking for.
Yes, strengths.
Character strengths that you bring to relationships. Are you a good person? Do you help people out? Do you, you know, are you nice to others? Do you have compassion? All those things they're not tangible. It doesn't matter how much money you have or whether you're wearing the most fashionable clothes. Those are virtues, if you will, that a person has. It's who they are, not what they do. It's just who they are. If they are intelligent, well, great. Let's focus on that. We all are imperfect. And if we expect ourselves to be perfect, we're going to be miserable.
Yes.
Recognizing that we all have strengths and weaknesses. My husband is awesome with plumbing. Thank goodness. We just had a big old leak. And some of those, mechanical sort of things. I am not. He's great with math. He was in engineering, so he's good with math and science and helping our kids with that. Not me. Now, English, he's not good at. And so that's where, I shine. Everybody has a little bit of something that they contribute to this world. Just like, you have a body and you've got eyes, and the eyes don't digest your food. The eyes have their own function. The teeth have their own function. And if you want to look at society and people in society as all parts of a body, we all have a function to fulfill. And just because you can't do something doesn't necessarily mean, well, it doesn't mean at all, that you're not needed. You're not integral to the body. So encouraging people to look beyond the comparisons. I want to compare myself to this person who's prettier, who's thinner, who's smarter, who's richer, who's this, who's that. There's always going to be somebody, probably out there who's prettier, smarter, richer, more successful, whatever. And if that's what you stake your happiness on, hang your happiness on that one hook. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure. Encouraging people to recognize what's going well in their life is really important. And that helps a lot with self-esteem, because it gives you a sense of personal power too, because you can change your situation if you don't like certain things that are going on.
Absolutely. Yes. I love it. Thank you for all of that. One of the big things that stands out to me is just talking about not being perfect and embracing that. When I first started doing interviews a few years ago, I would, every time I made a blunder, I would want to retake or redo it. And just like in the beginning of this, I'm like, nah, I've, over the years, it's like, oh, I'm going to blunder and I'm just going to, maybe make a note of it or laugh about it. But we're just imperfect. There's no reason to like make everything all perfect in a little bow, to me, because then I think we also are less approachable and not, like other people might consider, oh wow, those people are so perfect and I want to be like them, and they never make a mistake, and they were like what you were saying, right? They look a certain way and they drive a certain car and they dress a certain way, and man, we're all just human, just doing what we're doing.
We are. And even after if you notice a mistake, I got some constructive feedback when I first started doing the podcasts that I used the filler word "so" a lot. And I've worked very diligently to not use that word nearly as much, but I still use it occasionally. And when I hear it, it's like scratching fingernails down the blackboard. But I know that I'm doing a lot better than I was before. And all we can hope for in this life is to grow. We're not, even things, Olympic athletes, they're not going to be perfect most of the time. Most of the time, gymnasts don't go out there and get all 10s or whatever it is. They're going to have little blunders, and that's how we grow. I think it would be kind of boring to get to the point of being perfect, because then there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Once you don't have any room to flourish.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I like
Yeah.
moving forward. I get bored easy.
Yeah. It's like the illusion that we all need to arrive somewhere to be happy, or we must, whatever, all these different things in order to, as opposed to the journey. And also I wanted to make a little note of what you talked about in the gym. And that's so common. I was just talking with someone else about that like recently, and how often I'll catch myself wondering what other people are thinking. And then, but the funny thing is yeah, truly recognizing that the other people are thinking the same thing. So no one's really paying attention to anybody, because we're all just like in our own heads generally. Like most of us are all, thinking about what other people are thinking, but not thinking about what they're doing. So it's just
Exactly.
It's a good thing to note. So I think you've gone into a little bit of this already, but do you have any, you have 5 techniques you talk about for addressing the hecklers. Again, you may have like already addressed those, but is there anything else you want to add to that?
I don't remember which ones I covered, so let's just kind of go over a few of them. First, look for the facts. When you hear those hecklers, look for the facts for and against. If you hear yourself or you hear the voice of somebody else saying, you're not good enough, or you should have done something else, look for the evidence that that's true. Are you doing it based on a feeling, based on this feeling that you, quote, should be perfect? The next one is to get rid of that word, should. There's a time and a place for it, but it's better to try to not use it, because it puts a lot of pressure on us, and it puts a lot of regret in our minds. I should have done this. Well, you didn't. You can't change the past. What can you do now? What can you do instead of what should? You want to use the word I will or I can. So looking for the facts, checking out where those thoughts came from, where those beliefs came from that you are telling yourself. Is it from something in your childhood? And why do I say childhood? We pick on people's childhoods all the time. When kids are young, especially, when they're in elementary school and younger, they tend to think very dichotomously. It's either all good or all bad. They don't have that gray area. They can't say, well, mom came home and was just in a awful mood and was mean. Maybe it's because she had a bad day at work. She yelled at me, she's mad at me, I must be bad. Mm-hmm. And kids are very personal. They personalize just about everything, and they think all or nothing. I'm a good person or I'm a bad person, and so we want to help people recognize that when they heard some of these messages, they may have been in that stage of development. So they filed it away as, I'm bad at this, or I'm a bad person, or I shouldn't do this. And once we get to be adults, we can see different shades, if you will. There are certain, just like the word should, there are certain times where should is probably a very appropriate word, but a lot of times it's not. And seeing the bigger picture, being able to identify when is this appropriate, or is this even appropriate in this situation, is important. Along with looking at ourselves and looking at our thoughts and addressing those hecklers inside, getting new messages, getting social support, getting a cheerleading team, people who they don't have to lavish you with praise all the time, but good, supportive, positive friends that occasionally go, you know what, I really appreciate how much you do. That goes a long way. And if you start internalizing those messages, then you start realizing that, hey, I'm a pretty good person. And taking steps is another thing to do. If you hear those messages and you think, this isn't something that I want to do. Maybe, you're passing around and you are taking too much food because, it looks really good and you're not leaving any for anybody else. And you realize, I'm being kind of selfish. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's changeable. Mm-hmm. None of us is perfect, and we can look and we can change and we can grow to be the person we want to be. But you got to know what that looks like. What is it that's important to you? Self-esteem is our evaluation of who we think we are based on who we think we should be. Therefore, let's figure out who do you want to be, and sit down and I can't think of his name right now, and I feel so bad. The gentleman that created acceptance and commitment therapy talks a lot about defining our values And one of the activities I do with clients is to talk with them, and I get this list of, the top 100 values or whatever. And I say, pick out the ones that are important to you. I don't put a number on it. And they go through and they, probably check off 50 of them. And I'm like, okay, now cut it down to 10. And their eyes get all big and they do it. And then I say, now I want you to cut it down to 3. What are the 3 things that you want on your headstone, on your epitaph, at your funeral? What are the 3 things you want to be remembered for? And, they really have to do some soul searching to figure out which ones are most important. And then I say, okay, those are 3 values that are really important to you. So now when you're going about your day, you can check your behaviors against those. Is what I'm doing in line with, if kindness is one of them, is what I'm doing in line with kindness? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
My husband has become very tolerant over the years. I do a lot of animal rescue. And, it's just one of those things that I do because, I think animals need to have a voice, but it can get expensive. And so someone who is extremely frugal might not see the value in animal rescue. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's up to them. But what I'm doing to help these creatures is more important to me than having an extra, such and so number of dollars in the bank, as long as, you're not being unreasonable with it. But, as long as you're using good sense, that's more important to me. So when I'm looking at my values, I'm saying these little creatures are more important. So I'm going to do this. Somebody else may look at their values and say, no, my bank account's more important. So tough tiddlywinks, little kitty. And that is a perfectly valid decision, and each person has to make that, but you need to know what you stand for. So I can look back over my behaviors and what I do and all that stuff, and I can be proud of it. And I can go, I am the person I want to be. Not everybody's going to like me. And that's probably the last thing I want to end with. Nobody is going to be liked by everybody all the time. Mm-hmm. It ain't going to happen. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times when people don't like you, it's because of their stuff.
Of course.
Not yours. You are reminding them of something or someone from their past or something that they want to be that they're not, and they're envious. Whatever it is, it's their stuff. And no amount of cajoling is going to make them like you. That's okay. Be who you are. And, the lion's share of people will probably, like you, and that's okay. But it's also okay to not be liked and to not lose sleep over that. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. It took many, many years to wrap my head around the fact that, it's okay. Even, with podcasts and teaching over the years, we have student evals at the end of the semester. And my husband used to have to collect mine when I first started teaching, because sometimes they would say things on the evals that were harsh, not even constructive, just harsh. Mm-hmm. And I would focus in on those. 47 students in my class would have given me 4s and 5s on everything. But then I would have 3 students that just didn't like me, or like my teaching style, or like my class, or whatever. And I would hone in on those, and I would be sick the next time I had to go in and teach that class. And he's like, that's ridiculous. And, over the years, I've developed the ability to read those and, go, okay, well, that's that person's stuff, or look for the constructive nuggets that are there. But recognizing, instead of focusing on the 3 bad ones, focusing on the 47 good ones. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us don't do that. A lot of us do focus on those 3 bad ones, the 3 bad relationships you had, or the 2 coworkers that don't like you instead of the 27 that do.
Right. Yeah.
And encouraging people to focus on the positive. And it's just a much happier existence, in my opinion.
Yeah.
To try to focus on those things. And it's hard because we are hardwired for survival to notice the negative and give more weight to negative events and negative opinions and whatever. So we tend to dismiss the good. We need to switch that around. And it feels counterintuitive at first, but once you can develop that self-talk to stop those thoughts and go, you know what? No.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry I didn't meet their expectations or do what they wanted. However, I'm still a good person. And even if they make a mistake, again, we're not perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry I flubbed that. I'm still a good person. I'm still going to try to do what's right. But, I goofed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting because I too have had a hard time with not getting everybody to like me, and over the years, it's been an interesting journey because it's as simple as I have brown hair and someone associating like brown hair with something or someone that was mean to them or hurt them in some way that they don't like me, or I'm a woman and because of their mother, they don't like me or you or whatever. And like, when you really get down to truly getting that it's not about us, it's about whatever's going on with them. Just like for us, if we have an aversion to somebody because they look like our dad, who we had a bad relationship with, like, it's easy to be like, oh, I don't like this person. So like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of turning it around and recognizing that in ourselves too. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily matter what you do. You're not going to get anybody to like you if they're, working on old patterns or whatever happened to them that you happen to look like them or something like that. So it's just a
Right.
good thing to keep in mind. Would you touch a little bit on trauma? Because I know that's something that you talk about in your work and you help people with. And we have a lot of people in our audience who have had childhood trauma or adult trauma. And like, how does trauma impact someone's confidence and self-esteem?
Oh gosh. I know you want to keep this short, so I won't go on too much of a diatribe. Let's first look at what trauma is. Trauma is a loss of control. Trauma takes our power away where, we may feel broken. We may feel out of control. We may feel helpless. Our society says we are supposed to be strong, courageous, independent. There's no room for helplessness. There's no room for brokenness. And even though most of us are broken to some extent, our society wants us to wear these masks that projects to the world that we're perfect. So trauma affects us in a lot of different ways. Part of what I look at with trauma is, when did it occur? If it occurred in early childhood, it's going to have different effects than if it occurred in somebody's teenage years or their early adult years. Not saying that it's any better or worse. It's just going to be a little bit different on how it impacts the way they perceive the world and the way they perceive themselves. After a trauma, we often see the world as a much scarier, more dangerous place. Therefore, we may feel more vulnerable. And most of us don't like feeling vulnerable, so we can get angry about the status of things. And, that goes along with the feeling helpless. When people feel that way, there's no way to get out of it, so they often turn to unhelpful behaviors to try to cope with that, or become clinically depressed, that sense of helplessness and hopelessness. And again, that hurts our self-esteem, because our self-esteem, we want to believe that we are good, lovable, competent, able to do most things. And, trauma kind of undermines all of those, at least in some respect. With young children, it's especially impactful in some ways, because especially if the trauma came from their parents, because their parents are the ones that are supposed to love them.
Yeah.
My mom didn't love me enough to not stop doing drugs. My dad didn't love me enough to not commit suicide. These are things that kids tell themselves. They don't understand, like I said, that personalization and that dichotomous thinking. They don't understand that, addiction is far more than just deciding, I love you so much, I'm not going to do this anymore. The pain and the physiological problems that are caused by addiction, contributed a lot to it. It probably had nothing to do with how much the parent loved the child, but the child sees that as a direct rejection. Even with divorce, especially the nasty divorces, children can take that personally and feel like they weren't good enough to make that parent stay around. And we can see these patterns repeat later or even initiate if a marriage breaks up. Someone may feel like they weren't good enough, and that caused the relationship to end. A parent or a caregiver whose child dies. I've heard some lament that maybe they weren't good enough, so God took their child away. Or they weren't good. If they would have been better parents, then this wouldn't have happened. So there's a lot of guilt that goes along with trauma when it happens. We feel like we should have been able, there's that word, should have been able to control something. And when we can't, we try to find a way to make sense of it. And oftentimes the way that we make sense of it is we needed to do something differently. We failed in some way. We hear the same thing from rape victims, less now that we're turning that corner with education and empowerment, but we still hear rape victims saying, I shouldn't have been walking by myself down that alley. I shouldn't have gone to my car at night in the parking garage by myself or whatever. Well, it happened. You did. You'd probably gone to your car in that parking garage at night 100 other times and nothing bad had happened. And it's an unfortunate incident, but it's nothing that you did. You didn't ask for this. And helping people recognize that trauma is not something any of us ask for. It happens, and it's awful, and it's challenging, but they can do something with it. And as a trauma survivor myself, knowing that, I endured some things, but, I realized exactly how much I was made of getting through some of it. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. However, it's also given me, and the way I look at it, it's given me a perspective where I can understand what some people go through because I've been there. And there are a lot of things in counseling, especially, that we talk to people and we're like, I can empathize with you. I've never been there. I can't tell you I understand exactly how you feel, because I haven't been there. I haven't been to prison. I haven't been addicted to cocaine. I can empathize with you and I can understand intellectually. But that's as far as I can go with that. Does it mean I can't help you? No. But going through something definitely gives you a different perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing about that. It's such a common occurrence that people have gone through some kind of trauma, particularly in childhood. And I know that I really love what you said, though, because of what you endured, like it showed you what you're made of. Like I just got the chills when you said that. And that's such a great opportunity for people who have struggled with traumas to get that. Cause you are here, doing what you're doing, helping other people through their own trauma and seeing what you're made of. I just love, that was beautiful. I love it.
And I remember working with survivors of Hurricane Katrina, and, many, many months after Katrina went through, there were, thousands of people that were displaced in Florida, and we were going around providing, case management services and stuff. And some of them felt very defeated, but giving them hope and helping them hone in on their strengths and recognize that you haven't given up. And that says a heck of a lot, because a lot of people would have given up by now. This is so exhausting and frustrating and all those other things that were going on. I won't use those words now, but it was interesting, I guess. That's probably not the word I'm looking for. But it was very touching to see these people join together in the shelters and wherever else and help pull each other up and say, you know what? You're having a bad day, or I'm having a bad day. Let's help each other out because we're worth it. And that's what it comes down to. You're a human being. And because you're a human being, you're worth it.
Right. Thank you. Oh, beautiful. Got me all teary on that one. Thank you. Are there any last insights? Anything else you want to leave everyone with before we wrap up?
Just my mantra. I wish we would start teaching self-esteem when kids were in diapers and really focusing on teaching them to separate that language, even though they may not get it yet. Instead of you're a good boy or you're a good girl, you are a good girl. The behavior you did was bad. I disapprove of your choice in behaviors. I love you for who you are because you are a good person. And help them separate bad behaviors, because we all, especially children, when they're testing boundaries, that's what they're supposed to do. Right. Start helping them separate that out so they have that sense of that tape in their head from the beginning, that non-heckler that says, you're awesome. That coach in the back that goes, you got this.
Awesome. Thank you. It was a perfect ending note. Thank you so much for doing this, Elise. I really appreciate it. It was great to reconnect, and I appreciate you helping everyone through insecurity and low self-esteem.
I appreciate you inviting me to be here, Andy.
All right, everyone. And we appreciate you for showing up for yourself, for being willing to take a look at insecurities and low self-esteem that you might have and be addressing those hecklers in your head and working through it. So thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you on the next one. Hey everyone, I just wrapped up another great class with Dr. Elise Snipes, and she talked with us about addressing the hecklers in your head. First of all, I love that title. So a few things that she talked about were techniques for addressing these hecklers, right? This could be also looked at as your inner critic, your ego, what have you, right? So what are some techniques for addressing those hecklers? One of them is looking for the facts for and against what your hecklers are saying. If your hecklers are saying something like, I am not good enough, what are the actual true facts that you are not good enough, right? Looking for those facts. Is that actually true? It's really questioning the hecklers in your mind, right? Questioning what they're saying. Is what you're saying actually true, or is it not true? Also, she talked about getting rid of should, right? Should puts a lot of pressure on us. She mentioned it also creates a lot of regret. So instead of focusing on, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have said it like that, I shouldn't have done that thing that I did, instead of that, what can you do now? What can you do now in the present to change something for the better, to be kind to yourself or not be in that space of I should. And thirdly, where did the beliefs and thoughts come from? Where did that heckler come from? If there's a voice heckler inside your head telling you that you should never make a mistake, which is a big one of mine, where did that come from? Did you learn that from a parent? Did you learn that by a parent modeling something for you when you were a child? Did you learn that from a friend, from a sibling? Where did it come from? So taking a look at trying to uncover where the root of these hecklers are coming from. And like Elise was talking about her, root thing from childhood of not wanting to eat around other people and recognizing where that came from, like when her grandfather said what he said to her, right? So it could be something that someone said to us as children that was meant to be mean or something like that because those people were hurting and struggling in their own life, or perhaps it was something that we totally reinterpreted or interpreted in a way that was disempowering for us, and we're still taking it with us today. So just taking a look at where those beliefs and thoughts come from. Also, getting new messages, exposing yourself to new things, to, instead of your inner critic messages, exposing yourself to a fabulous support system, exposing yourself to events like these at AVAIYA University, exposing yourself to other people on the same journey as you, trying to become more confident, become more self-assured. surrounding yourself with those kinds of people is so helpful. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is what Elise said about, do you really want to spend your energy worrying what others think of you? We are never, ever, ever, ever going to get every single person in this world to like us. It's just not going to happen. So do you actually want to spend your life energy that you could be spending on something else, worrying about what others think of you? So just the last thing I wanted to leave you with. And thank you so much for showing up here. I think it speaks volumes of you that you're actually here and you're listening and you're watching. And that is the first step in you becoming more secure and in building more confidence in your life, is of course being aware of the fact that you might have insecurity or low self-esteem, but then showing up for yourself like you're doing right now. So thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.
AVAIYA has changed my life.
AVAIYA has made me the woman I am today.
AVAIYA is my home.
AVAIYA is personal freedom.
AVAIYA is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about AVAIYA.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, AVAIYA, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.